Land of the free, or is it? As we all know, 82% of Sri Lankan land is anyway state controlled. Do you know about this? But you also know that farmers, civilians are always, experience all these restrictions. Welcome to another episode of Advocata Studio, where we are untangling the issues of land in this country. And joining with us here is Mr. Aingkaran Kugathasa. He's an attorney of laws who's very involved in these land disputes, all these issues relating. And welcome. It's great to have you here, Mr.
Hi,
Kugathasan.
thank you for having me.
Yes, so let's start at the beginning. How did Sri Lanka's land ownership system come to be so heavily controlled by the government? Can you walk us through all the post-colonial era, the policies that were back then, and how it's affecting Sri Lanka right now in terms of land?
Well, I'm just going to make it short because that's a very long history. But like, if you look at the lands we have in Sri Lanka, there are two kinds of lands. Like, one is we call it the private land, and the other one is the state land. So basically, even if it's a private land, in Sri Lanka, the lands are owned by the state anyway. Even if it's a private land, that's technically owned in the sense like they can take the land back. That's what we are going to discuss today anyway.
Yeah.
But like the private land is basically, so you have a deed and then you own the land and you can just do whatever you want. I mean, I'm just putting it mildly, right? So you can just give it to anyone, you can just start your business, all kind of stuff. But when it comes to state land, so that's what we have mostly in the districts, in the provinces, particularly in the outskirts. So basically, those lands are given to people who don't have private lands for two purposes. One is for housing and residential purposes, and the other one is agriculture purpose. So there are two kinds of state lands. The misunderstanding is that those state lands, you don't actually technically own it. So basically, you enjoy the land. So basically, what are the purpose the land has been given to you? So for instance, if it's an agricultural land, then you can do cultivation and all kind of stuff. And those lands are given to people who actually need lands, who don't have lands in any other parts of Sri Lanka. Um, so that you have to request, and then based on the criteria and the need, the state will issue lands through the certain processes. So through permits, annual permits, land permits, and then gives, grants. Can you just edit that? Huh? So through permits and grants. So permit lands, annual permits, and all kind of stuff. And what you have to do is, so you apply for a grant, and then you have to use the land for that particular purpose, and you have to get the permit renewed. So annually or depending on the conditions. And for instance, what happens is like most people, they just apply for this land and get the lands from the state, but they don't use the land for the particular purpose. So they leave the land abandoned. So when the state offices, when they find out that that particular land has not been utilized for the purpose it was requested for, then they would cancel the permit and that would just go back to
Yeah.
the state.
Do you think this centralized system was designed more for efficiency or control rather? So like what has in your terms, like the long-term economic impact, or like any social consequences?
Well, it's like basically, my idea is that it's a socialist republic of Sri Lanka, for at least for the namesake of it.
Yeah.
So people then, the Crohn's land ordinance, and then the limitations on the extension of land you can own these days, all kind of stuff, because those days only a few people own the lands. They had control over the lands, and other people were like basically working on those lands as farmers or whatever, you name it. Then the state realized, okay, fine, this is not going to work, and so we have to like redistribute the land to everyone so they can benefit from it. But they want to keep the control of the lands, because so in other countries, if you look at it, the land, the state has nothing to do with the lands. No, if you own the land, you own the land, and you can just do whatever you want to. But in Sri Lanka, the state controls it because they think that if we let people on the land, and there will be in the sense like a certain elite group will own the land, most of the land, and that will discriminate a huge portion of the population, and that will basically uh, uh, undermine equality and all kind of stuff. When I say equality, I'm talking about economic equality as well.
Yeah.
So that is the whole idea. That is my understanding anyway. But like that's people have been arguing back and forth, like saying that okay, this is the purpose and this is not the purpose. It's not working. It's not working. That kind of argument. But we can't uh, say for certain that whether that policy is working. For instance, like if you look at the plantation sector, which is totally different from the rest of the country, but like people are saying is that okay, fine, you have given the lands to those companies, but like give us the ownership, and then the productivity will go up. So that is why they're asking, co-ownership, co-partnership, that kind of stuff. So we don't want to work on a plantation that is owned by the state but managed by these private companies, but we want to have some kind of ownership over those land. So then then that means that we have something, no, end of the day. So that kind of argument. So what I'm saying is like the idea behind this particular policy is to just make sure that one elite group doesn't get to rule or own most of the lands of the country, and like not deprive other people from having at least some amount of land. But in practice, I actually don't know whether it's working. I mean, we can talk about it when we talk about acquisition in detail.
Yeah, but there's also this thing, right, where these policies always remain intact even decades after independence, right? So like it's also a question like, is it inertia, political interest, or like in something else behind all that?
It's absolutely politics. I mean, even if you look at the how the state apparatus operates, it always favors the elite groups, people, and then like even that, like if you look at the judgments and all. So when we discuss the public purpose, it's obvious that the courts from time to time questions the state authorities when you say public purpose, but most of the lands, or at least in some cases, were acquired for commercial purposes. And when we talk about public purpose again, so it says for public purpose as a whole, but again, if you look at other countries and all, even in Sri Lanka, certain judgments, they say first you have to look at the local community, whether it benefits the local community. Before you look at the country as a whole, we have to look at the local community. But when you say, let's say the land has been acquired, and then you are setting up a very fancy hotel, and then you are bringing in people, like saying that local people are not qualified to work in those hotels, and then how does it benefit the local community? I mean, of course, like indirect, the tourism helps, and indirectly and all kind of stuff. But if you have to compare, no? How proportionately it benefits the local community. And like in most cases, lands have been acquired for investment purposes and development purposes, which do not help the local community in any way at all. So that is why the question is whether the system is actually working, and whether we have to actually rethink and like come up with reforms. People have been talking about several reforms when it comes to land in Sri Lanka, but nobody is actually taking any concrete actions because, like you pointed out or like you questioned, there is politics behind this, and it's land is not a legal issue; it's a rights issue. Now it's a political issue.
Right.
Not it's not now. It has always been a political issue.
Yeah, no, so I mean, we all know now 80%. I mean, it's also not too sure whether it's 80% or like around 96% of land is actually owned by the state. But now it comes to the term where we look at land acquisition, right? How the government approaches this, and whether these individuals who their lands are being acquired are being compensated or not. So, just a small question on this: if is land acquisition is often justified in the name of public welfare, but there's also a debate around compensation. So why is the compensation process under this land acquisition act so contentious?
Well, I mean, if you look at the process, they have to issue a notice and they have to conduct public consultations, no, particularly with the local community,
Right.
because like I said before, public. When you say public purpose, you have to focus on the local community first, then before you look at the country as a whole. But like if you look at the process, they don't hold enough consultations to understand the grievances of local community. So basically, without discussing anything, without explaining. So if, say, let's say the government is acquiring a certain land in Ratnapura, or in a private land in Ratnapura or somewhere. But when they say they simply say for public purpose, but they don't actually explain what that purpose is. I mean,
Yeah.
they just name it, but they don't actually explain. They care to explain the local community how that would benefit the local community and how uh, the local community can benefit from that particular project. And then they have to consider all those concerns, raised by the local community
So
before
now,
they.
how much is enough of consultation? What's
Well,
the idea? So like people will have so many things, what to expect. Some people don't know. What is it actually?
Well, it's a good question because people will always have different opinions. Different groups will have different opinions, so we can't just please everyone. That is which is true. But also, like what happens is how things happen is that these meetings are organized through local with the public offices that are they are already there. No? For instance, through Kacheri mainly. I can give you a couple of examples, but which is kind of irrelevant to this particular topic. But what happens is those beneficiaries, or if, let's say they are organizing a consultation or focus group discussion, these participants are identified through certain actors, certain officers. So how they identify those people, whether there is diversity, whether there's space for different groups to share their concerns and opinions, that is questionable. So for the sake of it, they are having consultations. But if you look at uh, the way they select the beneficiaries or participants, it's kind of it's not very transparent. Just put it like that way. So that is why people feel that not everyone's voice is heard, particularly the community members who will be affected by that, directly affected by that particular project. I can just say for that now in Jaffna, Punari, there is an issue ongoing issue about this particular cement factory, which was started under the previous government, and now they are trying to acquire certain land. And but the things local communities are saying that would damage the environment, and also there won't be any drinking water, and then those are like fishers community, and they are saying that will affect that also. So those, but things like those communities are saying that they've been informed of this particular project. They had never been consulted. So those are the things.
All
Like
right.
when it comes to consultation, I'm sure they had a couple of consultations. But what I'm trying to point out is that it's not always transparent. The participants are identified through state mechanisms without discussing it with the local civil society organizations. And so, without discussing the local civil society organizations, not everyone in that particular community is aware of those the issues, the legal steps, processes that need to be followed, and the impacts of that particular project. So they need to be educated. So it needs to be done in consultation with experts who are either from that particular community or who are working that particular community. But how it doesn't happen that way quite often.
So now, I just want to understand now, these are basic rights, for exact, right? Like, it's been generations. Is it also because we have like colonial era, and like because we have this, the state being so controlled over this land that people are unaware to this extent? In history, just a small snapshot on that, the reasoning why these individuals are very unaware of these.
Well, it's not just about this particular issue. No? Like the thing is, like everyone is supposed to know the laws of the land, but nobody knows. And I think that the latest curricula has some aspects of the civics and kind of stuff. But when we were in school, there was nothing unless you did political science or something in A levels. But so. And also, like people in Sri Lanka, like people, we are so used to not questioning the authorities, and I don't know why, to be honest. But like I remember why, because when you ask questions, when you start asking why, then that gives you a lot of responsibility. So people don't want responsibility. So if the moment I start asking questions, that puts me on the spot,
Into a
you know,
spot,
like
yeah.
yeah, and then also that means it comes with the responsibility, like. But people don't want responsibility. People just want to gossip about it and just go home. I mean, I'm not generalizing it, but what I'm saying is, the moment you start asking questions, it comes with a certain package, and people are not ready for it. And people always want someone out from outside to come and resolve that issue, whether it's a local issue, whether it's a national issue. We don't want to take the responsibility, but someone please come and take the responsibility and just do it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is the thing, people are not aware of it. And then I think the state authorities are very well aware of it, and they are kind of exploiting that lack of
Yeah.
knowledge.
So now, linking that again, now we are looking at urgent acquisitions also. Now, in this case, which the scenario that you are mentioning, these people will be, displaced very easily in these terms, right? So the term urgent acquisition, it always seems to be, the open door for misuse. And like, can you perhaps explain us, like, what should be the clear definition of this urgency, to be exact, that these land owners or these communities won't be that affected?
I mean, I'm just. It's very difficult for the courts, the judiciary, to do, like, interpret those terms. But I'm not in no position, or I don't have the authority. But what I'm trying to say is that in our legal system, those terms are used vaguely, and from time to time, our courts, our judiciary has pointed that out, and you can't just say everything is urgent kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking, like, for instance, I mean, to be honest, I can't think of anything that could be like that urgent. I mean, you have enough time if it's for development. I mean, like, for instance, like public purpose. The courts have repeatedly said, for public purpose, for instance, construction of factories, construction of roads, schools, hospitals. So let's say you're going to start, or free trade zone, or like open a free trade zone, or those kind of stuff. How urgent they could be. I to be honest, I don't even understand why they have that particular clause. For instance, say like COVID, so they are going to set up a hospital, like mobile hospital, or like some that is urgent, right? But like what I'm saying is, but it doesn't have to be a permanent structure, like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in that particular location, like,
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, so I mean, to be honest, as a citizen, I don't think that any development is an urgent development, like, you have to plan it. It has to be organic. And if you look at it, so many development projects that have been carried out by different governments, like, look at those, the conditions of the development projects, I mean, I can just give you an example, like when the Javonia bus terminal was open, that was open in the morning. In the afternoon, it was shut down because of the public protest.
Yeah.
And people are saying all kind of stuff. I mean, we were not discussed. This is affecting this, and this is affecting that. The urban council was protesting. The bus owners were protesting. The local chambers of commerce was protesting. So all kind of stuff. Well, I'm just saying. So they didn't just plant it there. So what was the consultation process like? I mean, like, I genuinely don't understand why the term urgent is there in that particular act, because I can't think of any, to be honest.
I was thinking now, there was this case in Bathurmullis where the water's edge is, right? There was this flooding hazards and all that, and the government had issued a gazette notice that we have to acquire this land, saying that it's affecting people, we just need to fix the issues over there. But there was this issue where people kept questioning, like, where's the reversal of it? You're taking urgent acquisitions, all this, but is there a reversal mechanism? I mean, now, of course, you don't see that in the bathroom area. It's water's edge and it's a state-owned enterprise. So, like, that itself, any cases where you have seen in the north or the east area when it comes to urgent acquisitions again, there's no reversal, to be exact, like on
No,
that front.
I can't think of any. There is no such project or intervention in the north and east. In the north and east, in the name of development, I don't think a lot of lands have been taken. So it's mostly militarization and high security zone.
Right.
And so there hasn't been any development projects, massive development, apart from some of the roads they've developed. So I can't think of any. But the thing is, like, now in Trincomalee they are talking about it. But that is also not urgent. But they are acquiring land in Trincomalee, and so yeah. So I no, I don't think so. I can't think of anything.
Okay, just a follow up question on that. Like, what are the safeguards we need to ensure that land acquisition truly serve public purpose and not private interest?
Well, I mean, transparency, in the sense, like, I mean, like we discussed earlier, I mean, we can't satisfy everyone, or we can't, that is impossible. And also, like, so these are the things, like, first, whether, so there is enough consultation with diverse groups, not just with groups that are identified through particular channel. So, involving experts from the local area or who are working in those local areas. That is number one. And number two, and in most cases, they don't even do EIA, environment impact assessments. Like, they just take the land for different purposes. But when it comes to military camp, you don't need that. But what I'm saying is whether they do that, and even when it comes to yeah, so that is whether that is there, whether that's a transparent process. And also proportionality, it's all about proportionality. It's like how we are going to balance it, like, so whether the local committee is affected, but it's helping the entire country as a whole. That's a different story. So we have to have certain measures, and how we can make sure that that is, the proportionality is there. I think it's through consultations and very transparent process, and giving enough time. And like, urgent projects are not there, but the problem is the notice is just put there, and then after some time they just come, the 30 days or whatever, they just come and take the land, or they try to measure the land, no? But the problem is, in between there's nothing, so it's quiet. So
Yeah.
it's quiet, and people, all of a sudden, some certain officials, some big vehicles coming in, and then just putting up all these, setting up all these the equipments and kind of stuff, and they are saying, okay, we are going to take it. So people who are living in that area, even they are not aware of what is going on. So where is this consultation part? So I think when there's a consultation, and also, like, the state has the responsibility to publish those details in all three languages, like, before they do it, I'm sure it's happening, but not enough.
Yeah.
And also, like, since I'm a Tamil speaking person, and Tamil, most of the documents come late in Tamil, no? So let's say the one publisher is coming today, that's only coming in, that comes in singular, but it will take at least a week or so to get the same document in Tamil. So that also limits our time to get ready for the next step, like whether we are going to sue it or challenge it, like in the courts, of that kind of stuff. So that is also important. And also, like, they can't just, when they have consultations, I have spoken to people who have attended a couple of these consultations, but it's not very informative. They don't actually give the full picture. So it's just random stuff, and only the positive stuff about it. For instance, the windmill in Mannar and kind of stuff. But now people have been talking about several other issues that were never discussed in the preliminary consultations. So that is why a very transparent process, and also, like, it has to be a continuous process. Like, for instance, like in the initial stage, you are conducting a consultation, but the problem is, uh, with the local community, without any experts or something. But after some time, people learn stuff, no? They do stuff, they have to do research and kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that is also enough. I mean, the state authorities need to make sure that that is also there in place,
Yeah.
for people to engage actively.
I just remembered this. There was this case. Basically, now when the land is acquired, apparently the government is not required to inform the the landowner, basically, because it's the state land, and there will be a gazette notification, of course, and the surveyors or the land registrar will come and just put a small board saying that it is the notice that this land is being acquired. Just want to know what other cases, like, have people been questioning this, any of that sort, do you know?
Of course, it's happening almost every day in Japan, no? Like, for military purposes. Like, what happens is, all of a sudden there's a board
There's
saying
always a
that,
board.
yeah,
Okay.
there's always a board. I mean, they put up boards, but that is also, like, after this, like, after people like protesting, and, like,
Oh, right.
all kind of
After
stuff,
all
all
that.
that. Now they've been putting up boards, but the things, like you said, they're not properly informed. But those, for militarization purpose, it's not necessarily the lands are not taken from the middle of the town, no? Basically in isolated places, like in the sense. I'm not saying that those are not people don't live there, but uneducated people, people who have who are busy with their lives and kind of stuff, people who don't actually understand the process, so they quietly come and put the notice board. And then what happens is all of a sudden, like we discussed earlier, the authorities come in and they do their stuff. So the notice board is legally sufficient, but are we only going to talk about legality of this issue, or are we really going to look into the interest of the local community? So then that's why I'm saying, so we have the process which is not very democratic. I mean, the sense, like, yes, we have to do this, do this, do this, do this, but the problem is people actually don't have the platform to actually engage meaningfully and express their concerns. And I mean, I can give you other examples. For instance, like they just give 1 week and you have to do it. But the thing is, like, people have to do this with everything else. But the authorities, that is the only job. So they can just come. They are getting paid for it.
Correct.
But like, if I'm a local, an individual living in the area, I have to look after my family. I have to look after my business. I have to look. In addition to that, I have to look into that also.
Yeah.
So you can't just come in and say, like, okay, you have to do this because this is the time this is the time, this is what the law says. So you have to be mindful of other stuff also. But what I'm trying to say is, if the local, I mean, the notice period is sufficient, if the authorities are genuine about it. But what happens is those processes are simply done for the purpose of fulfilling the requirements, so they can't be challenged in the courts. So not because they actually want to understand the ground reality or the requirement. So that is the issue. I think. So I mean, even 2 weeks back, there was an attempt to acquire certain land in the north, and that was like stopped by the people. But how many times we can do that? And also, again, it takes us back to the question of public purpose. What kind of public purpose, and the proportionality and the kind of stuff. And also, even now there are cases like in which, like, the people have not been compensated, and people, because, like, not because no, there's no delay or anything like that. People are not even aware that they are entitled for a compensation.
Right. So that's the. From what you just said, compensation is not fair for everyone. Neither some people don't know that we are allowed to get compensated. What's the ideal scenario for this sense? How should compensation be received by the landowners if their land is being acquired?
Well, the usual process is fine, but the problem is the delay. And sometimes, like, for instance, like, let's say, I can think of this Marine Drive issue, when they were like trying to expand it, like, it was delayed for a very long time because of someone challenged in the courts and kind of stuff. And even the Southern Expressway, there was an issue. The issue is delay. Like, for instance, when it's delayed, then how they are going to calculate the rate. And also, I'm not aware of the land prices in the rest of the country, but in the north, especially in Jaffna district, uh, it doesn't go with the rest of the country. How they calculate the price of the land in Jaffna, they have their own formula. Like, it's difficult. So usually it's above the market value. I mean, the value that is given by the official agencies, like the valuation department. So if they say, let's say the valuation department comes and says this is like say 10 million, but in the actual market it would be like more than 10 million. So people actually want that particular amount, because if they want to buy a land, they have to pay that amount, not the amount the authority says.
Yeah.
So that is also an issue. And then also, when it gets dragged, uh, again, other issues. No? For instance, I have seen people, like, they haven't even constructed the boundary walls because they have not been compensated.
Right.
When they expand the roads and all.
So one of our team members, basically our research team, and they have mentioned that in one of their research is that they have found that it takes minimum 72 weeks for compensation to be received, right? Otherwise, minimum is that. Maximum, you don't know, it can be 15 years. And also the fact that now with the delays, there should be an interest. Now we have inflations, the money going up and down, the value of that. And then again, these landowners are not being informed of how these are being calculated, right? And it's always a sense now, these people, I think, back to your point again, now when you ask questions, it's again another problem to be focused on, from other than their thousands of things to do within their day. So now, if you could prioritize one reform in Sri Lanka within this land management system today, like what would it be and why?
Huh.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one,
It's
definitely.
because like it involves a lot of other stuff. It's just not just it's very complicated. And the thing is, because of the past actions of different governments, people don't trust the system. And I think that's what the current government has promised, that we are going to be transparent and kind of stuff, which is a positive thing. Now, what I'm trying to say is, I'm just looking at this in a different view, in a sense, like me, I come from the north and all. Uh, so when there's a trust deficit from the past actions, and the state is not trying to address it, even with the Right to Information Act. So they are supposed to disclose all kind of stuff proactively and kind of stuff. That never happens. Like, I remember, like, soon after the act was passed, I think it was Horana or urban council. I don't know the actual the exact local authority, but they published something, and everyone was like, "Wow, this is nice," something like, which is really good. But what I'm saying is, after that,
It's not practiced
it's not
often.
practiced at all. I mean, even when we question, like when we send the request, they delay it purposely and kind of stuff. What I'm saying is, these things are not disclosed proactively and on time. So these are the things the government should focus on. And I understand, but the thing is, like, we have to balance, like I said, like when the land is required, of course we have to take the land. The state has to take the land. And also, like, we have to look at the interests of the people. But the thing is, like, if the government, whether this government or the next government or whatever, so they have to establish a system that bridges this gap between the state and the public. So that, I don't know how they are going to do that, because when that is established, I think, because like what happens is, now people are like, just one thing is, like, when I question something, then that also adds burden, to my personal life and kind of stuff. And the other thing is, like, then you will have to deal with the local officers again. So, like, for instance, people are you think people are scared of the president? No, they are more scared of the Grama Niladhari, because every single thing you have to go to him or her. Then if he or she doesn't sign your document, you get nothing. So people are more scared of the Grama Niladhari than the president. So that needs to be addressed. So the state should ensure that there won't be any repercussions when they question the state authorities. Like,
Right.
I think that is the first step in anything, if they really want to address this trust deficit. And also, like, going back to that, like, just one point, like, in why people don't question it, because at least in the north, because of the war, the state authorities, particularly the armed groups, they used to take the lands whenever they want, as they please. So now people are so used to that. Like, just like the checkpoints. Like, if just, let's say, like, they're setting up a checkpoint right in front of, I mean, like, just, yeah, whatever, some in Kolpiti.
Right.
But the problem, there will be social media posts, and the mainstream media will cover it, all kind of stuff, because that's, people are not used to it. Used to having a checkpoint in Kolpiti, like, I mean, after the war, at least. But in Jaffna, just put a random checkpoint anywhere. Nobody questions it. Even the media don't give any prominence to that particular thing, because it's part of their life. So likewise, taking the armed forces taking land is also part of it, and people. That's why people don't realize that there should be a process, and if that process is not followed, they have the rights to challenge it in the courts. And also, even if they follow the process, and if the state takes the land, they are entitled for a compensation. Those stuff people are not aware, and I think that is a failure on the side of the civil society as well, because people have been talking about a lot of stuff, but the problem here is, okay, it's not all because, like we discussed earlier, the state has the right to take the land, so we can't always oppose it. So,
Right.
when there is when it's legitimate, we can't oppose it. But the next step should be how we can ensure that at least people are compensated. It's a very transparent process. People are not affected. No? They are not victimized through this entire process. So we have to prepare the committee for that also. Like educate them, make them aware of the process, and also setting up. Legal aid support services, right, kind of stuff. I don't see that happening a lot, but at least in the but in the northern east, what happens is because of the war and because of the continuous land grab and kind of stuff, people are being very vigilant. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they use the proper channel to address those issues.
Right.
The only means I can't say the only, but the main approach is basically protest. You protest whenever the authorities come. You protest, but the thing is that's not concrete. No, then that means you have to be in the street every single day. So that also needs to be assessed. So in short, like to your question is that uh, to address the trust deficit, to establish transparency in the entire process, people should be aware, or people should feel that there won't be any repercussions. They have the rights. Although the state also has the right to take the land for whatever the purpose, legitimate purpose, and also we also have the right to question it without facing any repercussion.
Right.
So when that is there, people will start asking questions without any problem, without any hesitation. That's how we hold the government accountable, and that is what we don't have in Sri Lanka because of the repercussions.
So basically, what you mentioned all this was that there's no environment for them to negotiate before going for protest or before going for a case, court case, right? So now, within all that, now since you have been involved in these cases and all, like what has been one achievement that you have gained within your experience when it comes to these land issues, especially in the north and the east?
Legally, in the sense, the there's a case, but I don't know how that's going. It's in the courts. I can't comment on that one. Um,
It's okay, no need names of
yeah,
the
yeah.
case,
So what
but
I'm
the
saying is
pattern of
like,
it at least.
so if you look at Panama case, so the judgment is there, and the cabinet paper is there, but still it's occupied, no? By the armed forces. In the north also, like how it happens is like it's always politicized. It's not done through the judiciary. There have been cases that have been dragged for like years and years and years, and end of the day, the court says the state or the authorities, mainly the armed forces, they come and say national security. If you look at KKs and Palali and all kind of stuff, and in my personal opinion, which in some cases, not the whole area, but certain areas, there is a legitimate need to have those lands, because like we have a harbor, we have an airport, all kind of stuff. But like just like the road that was reopened like a few weeks
Oh,
back,
yeah, yeah.
a lot of land that can be released, given back to the rightful owners, are held back by the authorities. And judicially or legally, we haven't very successful, because how do I put it? Like, because the national security always comes first. So for us, like I said earlier, there haven't been any major development projects, and lands have not been taken in the north in a large scale for development projects. So it's mainly militarization and in the name of national security. And whenever we challenge national security, we haven't been very successful in that end. So it's unfortunate that
Yeah.
I can't give you I can't end this on a positive note, but that's the reality
It's the
because
reality.
yeah.
So there's this question in basically in today's context. What are the main challenges farmers or any fishery industry who hold government issued land permits or leases compared to private landowners?
It's for both people, like, both groups of people. So what happens is like, say like the road that was released recently, that was only like a kilometer and a quarter or something like that, like 1.25 kilometers, something like that. But because of that road, the people had to travel around to take their produce to the market or that kind of. I'm only talking about the road. I mean, I just went there. I just wanted to see the place and I'm going stuff. So only the road, but the sides, all the lands are empty, occupied but empty. So I don't know why they keep it. I don't know. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that is it doesn't matter whether it's a private land or state land. It's for the question is what was the purpose the land was used for, like for instance cultivation or fishing or kind of stuff. So people are losing a lot of income because the areas that is their main livelihood. And for instance, like the coastal areas, mainly when I'm talking about Palali and KKs and all, so mostly coastal areas, fishermen. So now they are in inland, so they don't have access to seas.
Right.
And also, like, there are places like, for instance, Milty and all, the coastal area has been released, so we have access to that. The thing is, like, there are restrictions, so you can't leave the stuff, the boat and the net and a kind of stuff, you can't leave it overnight.
So the
And
question here again is that now, if the state is not the enabler, what exactly is public purpose? What's the definition of
that
that?
is the thing. So it's not like, I mean, that is what we are trying to figure out, no? And that is why whenever we go to the courts, the first thing the public, I mean, I think the term national security overweighs public purpose, and they're saying that for the security of the entire nation, we have to have it, because they still talk about terrorism and LTT and kind of stuff. So that is the thing. So when I have seen it, I have read it, and the first thing the authorities throw, at least in the northern, is national security. So when they throw that card, there's nothing else to play for us. Like, that's the end of the whole case. And even now they're saying that. That's the thing. From time to time, the security forces or the intelligence officers, they say the people are trying to revive LTTE, and the terrorism is coming back at least once a year. No, they are saying it, and that is their excuse to keep it. And also now, what they are doing is, it's interesting. Like recently, there was a news saying that in Point Petro, in the northern part of Jaffna, the army had been ordered to leave private houses, right? And then a bunch of people are protesting in front of it. Interestingly, people don't want the military to leave.
Why not?
Because they are saying, because of drugs and all, they need the security of the armed forces. So that
right.
is, they have created it. They have created it, but people don't really understand the difference between the police and the armed forces, because of their involvement in civilian lives, the military for armed forces, people don't actually distinct these two agencies, the police force and the security agencies. So people actually rely on these armed forces in certain areas because they don't have access to the basic needs. I don't know the current status, but when I was actually working in Mullaitivu, there are villages that were looked after the security forces, water, electricity, and a kind of stuff. I don't know whether it's still there, but what I'm saying is, so if you go and ask a local officer, a local villager, whether you want the military to be there or not, they would definitely say yes, because but it's a failure
Is
on
it
the.
is it that they're relying on them too much?
Yes, because that's how it is. That's how it's designed. Because the security forces and also the state agencies want to show the rest of the country, particularly to the international community and the locals, that the locals want them there. It's not we are forcibly occupying. The people are okay with it, but it's only the political factions that are trying to manipulate this entire scenario, situation, and trying to gain something out of it.
Does this also translate that it's because there's no proper economic development that they're so relying on the sources, the resources that these military or the state navy or whatever, that they're so relied onto this? Is it because of that lack of
Two.
economic
One is
development?
that. One is that. One example is that all these rehabilitated LTT cadres and even the other people, civilians, are working on farms that are run by military people.
Yeah, that does not make sense.
Yeah. So the issue is that those lands, the farms are on lands that have been occupied by the military. in most cases illegally.
Oh,
Right.
right.
And so these people are working on it because there is no, like you pointed out, there aren't many livelihood opportunities for them. That is one thing. The other issue here is that access to services. For instance, if it's a very remote village far away from the town, the CEB is very reluctant to spend money on the light posts and the cables and kind of stuff. What they're saying is, they're asking the local community to give connection for at least for the just for the 10 houses. We can't spend millions. So you find the money. Where would they go? So what they do is they reach out to the army camp right next to them. So the military, what they do is they provide electricity, they provide water, that kind of stuff. I'm not saying they are providing financial assistance, but what I'm saying is certain services they are providing, particularly electricity, water, and also because of all these not militant groups, like those underworld groups like AVA and all. There are stories about the connection between the security forces and the AVA. I'm not going to get into that one because it's not established. The link is not established. But the problem is people also feel secure that, and also the drug. People believe that because those things are smuggled through from India to the northern coast. So presence of militarization is essential to control that kind of stuff. So these are the. But the problem is, if you go to talk to a villager, these are planted by the security forces themselves.
Right. It looks like they have made the environment that benefits
Absolutely.
them and also influence them to the villagers to think that it's a win-win situation.
Exactly. If you go to those villages, particularly the Kilonchi and Mullaitivu and everywhere, but particularly Kilonchi and Mullaitivu, so many intelligence officers. I'm not. I don't think they are actually intelligence officers. At least they pretend to intimidate people. So because
Oh, right.
I don't think any intelligence officer would just come and say I'm an intelligence officer. I mean, he won't disclose his
I don't think
identity.
that's
That's not how it works. So these people are basically they are part of this entire military apparatus, but they are. I don't think they are the actual intelligence officers. But
Right.
their job is to intimidate people. If there is a function, whether there is an opening. So even an outsider is going to a remote village, the moment we go there, they're there. They know because they have connections, because most of them are from the local communities. So those are the people, the elders or the senior people, they believe that those are the people who plan those ideas. Like military is there, it's a positive thing. We need them. That kind of, I don't know whether you remember, like a long time back, when a military officer retired or transferred, I don't remember exactly, the villagers cried in the welfare. So it was like in the media in the south, like saying that, see, people are like okay with the military. It's just the politicians that they are trying to divide the country, kind of stuff. But again, if you look at it closely, even those are like staged.
Right.
Because when he ran for the elections in 2020, he lost. So if he was like that popular, I mean, lost in the sense like he only secured very few votes. So if he was that popular, the people who were actually there, even he didn't have that number of votes. So that clearly shows that those things are like staged and those ideas are planted. But the thing is that there's no way we can prove it, and that is a huge issue. If you go talk to these places, that is why even for us it's very difficult to challenge this narrative that the lands of the people have been occupied illegally and people are really struggling. But they throw stories like this, like the last week, the people protesting in front of the military camp, asking the military not to leave. So then, and those things get highlighted in the south. So that's the
Yeah.
media gap in the
So now
media.
here's a tough question. How do we fix this?
I mean, I generally don't know, because like when we start talking about media, it's another. How do I put it? Like it's a mess, right? And also it's highly politicized. And if you look at the media landscape, it's mostly owned by owned by politicians or the relatives of politicians, and it's the main tool that have been used by both the politicians in the north and the south to divide the community. So that's how they benefit from it.
Right.
And also when you try to talk about regulating the media, and again we have to think about the freedom of expression as well. So if you give the power to the state, and then again controlling the media or regulating the media, if we are going to set up a mechanism, so there have been so many discussions going on, but again, the media is another topic that we can talk on for like ever, just like the land issue. How we fix it, um, I think, at least in the northern, I'm not talking about the country, but at least in the north, like I said, the trust deficit. People are like few months back, no, almost a year back, I was invited to a meeting in the north, and that was organized by one of the ministries. And the first hour, the ministry was trying to like convince the participants that they were not, they didn't have a hidden agenda.
Okay.
And
Sure.
before that discussion, and I was talking to the officials who came from Colombo, because I knew them, and so I said this would be one of the major issues you will have to deal with before you when you start the meeting, because people don't trust you. And they said, you really think that it would be that bad? I said, trust me, it's going to be like that. And like I said, for 1 hour, like people are like questioning why you are here and why now, all kind of stuff. No? And when you have that trust deficit, and the government is not addressing those issues, no? Effectively. For instance, like they say something, and also the promises, the election promises,
Mixed
kind of
messaging is what you're saying?
yeah, and then they don't even hesitate to violate, no, and the excuses they come up with when they violate those promises, and people are like already fed up. Yes, they expect some change. They whenever the governments change, they have hope. Of course, they have hope. That's why they vote. I mean, otherwise they would just
Yes.
go to these booths and vote early in the morning. But the problem is, like sooner those promises are violated by the same people, and then like, so that is why if you talk to people, it doesn't matter whether it's red or green or yellow or blue, whether I mean talking about the political parties, no, because the thing is like nobody's going to talk about our issue, but at least this government would do this government wouldn't do that kind of stuff. The very minimal very granular stuff, like we're not so important stuff. For instance, as long as they don't plant Buddha statues overnight, we are fine. As long as they don't use PTA whenever they please, it's fine. People are not even talking about structural reforms, no?
Right.
They are only talking about, because at least that, even now when we talk about it, that they said only during, I'm not talking in favor of any government, but I'm saying that the practical discussions, no, only during the Yahapalana government we were like free to talk about stuff. Before that we were like, no, there was
You
no
never know
space.
when a white man will come to your
Exactly.
door. That was the narrative back then.
And
Yeah.
and then soon after Gotabaya Rajapaksa became the president, people were like, went back, okay, time to shut up.
Right.
So it's there. It has become part of their lives. So it's survival. You know, I'm saying. So they but the thing is like for instance, like I pointed this out in a different forum as well. Like whenever the government changes, the or before the government changes, that this government couldn't do that because this is the first time they have come to
Yes.
power. But they soon after they became the AKD became the president. They're talking about releasing some lands, opening roads, and now there are no checkpoints. There are elephant paths and all. There are no checkpoints. Like it's fine. It's nice, that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is those are not structural reforms. And then
Those are plastic
exactly,
solutions.
like I mean, so when what happens when the government changes? And what I'm saying is, even this militarization and national security, that's my point, that's why I'm getting at. So this is like, it's obvious that it's so politicized, because like before AKD there was a national security risk, but 2 weeks later there's no risk, so they can release the land and they can just vacate the particular army camp. So what changed in 2 weeks?
Exactly. What changed in 2 weeks, right?
So I mean, these are the questions we have to ask. So it's entirely politics. It's entirely a political move. So that is what it bothers us. No? You say national security, and also what bothers is them saying no, national security is not an issue. Courts falling for it. I don't know whether you can post this, whether I will be in contempt
It's
of
a valid
court.
response, actually.
This is the thing, when this is challenged in the courts, the courts should look into this, like how, so they have to ask the authorities how, so what changed in 2 weeks, what was the situation in Jaffna,
What's the
like
hope that you're promising at this
so
point?
like you check with the army commander said just fine, release the law, reopen the road. But 2 weeks, how was it different? What was the situation in Jaffna that didn't allow the army, the security forces to reopen the road? So those are the questions. So then it's obvious, then the courts will actually know that there is no legal ground or legitimate ground for the security forces to keep those
Right.
lands and keep those roads closed. So that's what I want to highlight. And then going back to your the previous question, is like that the ambiguity in the language in that particular law, for instance, the public purpose and also the
Urgency.
urgent projects and kind of stuff. I think it needs to be rewritten in a way, because like there's a principle that says that the laws shouldn't be like vague, because like then that enables
It
that
allows to
yeah,
a
so
wide interpretation.
and abuse of power, no? Like for instance, like it can be interpreted into anything, and like then we us going to the courts and all this different stuff. But before that, what comes before prior what do you call that,
Negotiation.
before we go to the courts, no, before we go to the pre-trial period. So before the pre-trial period. So it's also about intimidation. So if you look at it, I think I need to highlight this also. The journalists who highlight those issues, the militarization, state-sponsored colonization, these establishment of Buddhist temples and kind of stuff in the middle of nowhere where there's no one. Again, I just want to make this clear that Tamils are not against having Buddha statues. Even during the peak of the war, Nagadeepa was there, Nainadevi was there, and there was a vihar in the middle of the town. Nobody touched it, and nobody is against Buddhism. We have this archaeological site which was not touched by LTT. So which clearly shows that, not by LTT or Tamils, it clearly shows that people are not against Buddhism or like the said media organization project in the south. What people are against is that state-sponsored colonization, land grab that changes the demography in the north and east, because we have already lost our representation for different reasons. Like, I mean, of course, different reasons in the sense that people are leaving the country. That is one. So from 9 seats to now 6 seats in Jaffna electoral district. So what I'm trying to say is people are totally okay with Sinhalese living among themselves, among them. So for instance, if there's a Sinhala village in Navatkuli, and I have worked with both the not I can't say host committee, but the neighboring committees and the Navatkuli Sinhala committee. The way they interact with each other, the way they help each other, I work with them, so I can personally say that I have talked to them, witnessed it. No? Right. So they have no issue. But when they try to with the intention of changing the demography and changing the history and using this to deny that these places used to be um, uh, changing this will eventually undermine Tamil representation at the local level as well as the national level. So these are the concerns they have, and it's very obvious from Mahavali project to everything. So even if you look at it, like again, it's relevant to the Iranimadu tank in Kilnochi. So now in Jaffna, there is no drinking water. I mean, there's lack of drinking water. So now there is the project. There have been discussions, and now it's on hold because of politics. So initially the plan was to bring drinking water from Iranimadu tank to Jaffna district, but it was put on hold because the farmers in Kilnochi district felt that they don't have sufficient water to share, because there are a lot of farmers. But there was another plan to like connect one of the rivers to Iranimadu tank. Then there will be sufficient water, so that can be distributed or shared with Jaffna district as well. Then again, the question again, Mahavali Authority,
Right.
Trincomalee.
So many authorities also to talk.
And when the central government gets involved, Tamil people are scared, reluctant to work with them, because they know there comes settlements, singular settlements, just like in Trincomalee, just like in Ampara and all kind of stuff. So whenever there is a central government involvement, people fear that it comes with other package. Right. So we would rather
It's
live
all
without drinking
intertwined
water.
with another lot of set of
So
issues.
those are the issues. So anyway, I mean, I like we discussed earlier, it's a highly complex issue, and without genuine intention, if they really want to address, because like the moment whatever the government, the state, I'm going to say state, the state authorities resolve the land issues, half of the ethnic issues resolved.
Right. So now there's a quick question in between is that with the current government, the new government, can we hope, and like what is it that we can hope for? What is the lower hanging fruit that this government can achieve or like get a kickstart on when it comes for all these land reform related issues?
From the statements and all, the 13th Amendment, the land power and all kind of stuff, I don't even think they can touch on those issues, because I already see pushback in the South, like saying that no, that is not needed, we don't have that. And also, uh, even before the elections, after the elections, the politicians, the key politicians, the key leaders of the current government, saying that people just want whatever uh, the South wants. There is no difference. We all Sri Lankans, that kind of stuff. No, I'm just focusing on the Northerners. I'll come back to your question. So that is not okay. That is not right, actually, because like the intersectionality of these issues, like you can't just put everyone in one basket and say, okay, fine, we are Sri Lankans and kind of stuff. We have to embrace it, and I don't think that is. I don't know how this is going to go, but like I don't think a lot of Sri Lankans, Tamils, feel that they are Sri Lankans. They are part of Sri Lanka and kind of stuff. It's like they know they are Sri Lankans and they love the country, but they don't want to be labeled just because you say so. There's a difference, no? Yes, I am Sri Lankan and I love my country. I want to live in this country, that kind of stuff. That's why people remain in Sri Lanka. That's a different story. But I don't want to be called Sri Lankan just because you say so.
Right. Not to
I want to
forcefully
feel, yeah,
enforce
don't
it on you.
force it. Just like the language. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is the whatever the promises given or the statements given by the top leaders of the current government, I haven't seen anything that recognizes pluralism. Like say different communities with different needs, different identities, different cultures, different practices. They are just trying to put everyone in one basket and say, okay, we are Sri Lankans, we are done. That kind of stuff, and that is not going to work. I mean, trust that is not going to work. Different governments have tried that. That is not going to work because that's where we talk about equity.
Is it something that we have to accept that it's not a it's we can't go ahead with a one size fit all solution?
That's not going to work at all. That will never work, because even now, even just forget about other issues, but like because of the conflict, 26-year long conflict, we have lost so much as a community. So if you just say like you are giving 5 rupees to the rest of the country, and if you are going to give the same 5 rupees to the north and east, which was severely affected for 26 years, that is not going to cut it. So you have to have special projects, you have to have special focus, and you also have to understand. I mean, ending corruption and ensuring transparency will definitely help. But if that fails to recognize that these are different group of people with different aspirations, who are very skeptical about the system for the last 76 plus years, nothing is going to work. And I think that is not there.
Any last comments or statements that we could hope for Sri Lanka's land reforms?
A national level consultation to start with, in the sense like so many consultations have been done, but when I say consultation, I'm not saying I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel, but what I'm saying is that at least to start the conversation between the north and south on the land issue. I know we are talking about land in general, but I'm just focusing on that. There should be a movement. The government alone can't do it. I don't think they can do it, but there should be a movement with the involvement of the north and the south, which is tricky, and but I think it's not impossible. Uh, that focuses on different politicized land programs, which is one of the root causes of this issue, the conflict, uh, and the government should be open about it, and they have to have the political will to talk about it. And for some reason, when it comes to land, the militarization, national security, the politics, it's different from the north and the south. I agree with that. But when it comes to land acquisition for private, like in the name of development and public purpose, but most of the time it's used for it only benefits certain groups, elite groups that are with the government or that work with the government. So I don't see any difference between governments when it comes to that. They don't really care whether it's the south or the north.
Right.
So if the current government is genuine about its commitment, I think they have to start there. The process is process irrespective of who you are, and ensure that it only the primary focus is public genuine public purpose, not in the name of not something else in the name of public purpose. If they can do that, if they can start there, because like you whenever you do, but the thing is like if you talk about massive reforms, it takes time. But before you get started, it's time consuming, right? And people get fed up, and the opposition parties and everyone jumps in, like just like what happened during the constitution making process in 2015, right? So it's a massive process, and you drag it and you drag it and you drag it, and then it never happens. So just to give some hope, I think the government has to throw something. And I think by doing how they can do is by ensuring that whenever there is a thing, I don't know whether they will do it with Adani project in Mannar. If they do that, I think that'd be a good start to build trust, and also like show the country and the rest of the world that due process is followed, and it's always the benefit of the public before anything else, like they claim.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kugathasan, for coming here, expressing your thoughts and some valuable insights that we could hope for. I mean, especially with for the government to look at also what are the things that we can do, especially with the movement. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And for our followers, our subscribers who you think you resonate with these issues, please put a like and put all your comments, your concerns. We will definitely look at any issues that we think are valuable for the next episode as well. Definitely on land reforms. If you're interested, put us a comment and a like. Thank you.